All right. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today?
Good, good.
I just realized like before the meeting that today's not a red day, but like they say a pink day, if you will. And I said, I think I'm gonna be the only one on that meeting. I don't know, but happy to know that you guys are here. Good. Let's go right into it because I have to leave a little bit early for a meeting, and I might be wrong, but Katerina, you are a tester. Is that correct? You work as a tester.
I work, yes.
Currently.
No,
In
currently
the
no.
past. In the
Yes.
past. Okay. Okay, I thought you were. The reason I ask is because when reading the last chapter, I remembered of you that you have some experience on this. So it would be nice to hear your perspective on the last one. Testers are your friends. The developers consider you friends, a friend, or how was it in your experience?
Mm, so I don't have such big experience, but in my last project, we didn't deal with developer direct. So we tested uh, how I put it. So we didn't test like fully our application. We adjusted for our needs, and we
Mhm.
tested so it will fit our needs. So
Your needs.
um, yes. So we have two teams: my team, automation team, and manual. And manual team deal with developer, but they deal with manager. they
Okay,
so
okay.
yes,
Not
they
not with a
talk.
not with a
Yes,
developer.
no,
Yeah,
with
it's
the
usually it's like that, especially in bigger companies. In smaller companies, you interact with them directly, and that is where, yeah, it could. I don't want to say it could be problematic, but it depends on the developers. Of course, no one likes their system to be criticized and all of this,
yes.
but it is
So
but it's very important, like testing or this type of when they say the QA department, if you will, it's very important because we are so into the code that we could become blind into certain scenarios or we could become blind at certain things, and as a result, we might not test every single possible scenario because again we're so into it, we see the code every day, and that, yeah, it's then very helpful when people have a different perspective, a fresh perspective, and then they are able to find stuff that, oh yeah, you're right, I didn't think about this scenario, things like that.
so I would add here. So usually, well, we learned for the test in all the books and all the stuff. We have this scene. So when you write the report, it has not to be like personal. You made a
Correct,
mistake. Yes. So
correct, correct,
it's a
correct.
big and red like line. So it's underlined in many of the books and underlined of all the teachers. So it's not a personal scene.
To not
Yes.
attack the to not
Yes.
write in such a way that you're talking about the person but talking about the product.
Yes. So yes,
uh,
like
mm, exactly that, yeah, exactly, that's very important, not only in testing but in giving feedback in general. No, your answer is wrong, no, this solution doesn't really work, as an example, stuff like that. That makes the interaction a little bit better because at the end it's just human speaking to human, and it can get a little bit, egos can get in the way if people feel attacked in any way. Very good. So think about that. Think about that when you are a developer. Remember that testers are there to find product bugs, and it's better to find them in-house or before release than your clients having to find that those bugs. Okay, so remember about that, and also remember that, yeah, at the end of the day, all of this is done to be able to find those errors. And yeah, I worked at a company where I had a colleague. He was not, he used the application, but he didn't develop the application. And he will find some very, very weird stuff that we were happy he found them. But it's like, how do you test for this stuff? Like, how did this idea came to your head? The problem was that he worked with the hardware, so he had to do some very weird things. But he that made him good as a tester. So yeah, you always find people like that. And I love this one. I love this one. A message to the future. I want to hear from you. A message to the future. I really liked this stuff, but I want to hear from you. What did you think when you read this? Because we have spoken about this throughout the education.
Yep. Don't code for yourself, code for your future self, for the future people that might read the code. Basically, even for your future self, because in the future, after 3 weeks, 1 month, 6 months, the longer time it passes, when you come back to the code, it's like, what is this? Where is this coming from? Why I did this?
Exactly. Correct. So it is true. When we write solutions, okay, the problem might be difficult, but it doesn't mean that you have to create complicated solutions as well. That's what we spoke and we have been speaking in many lectures. And I know even for the group of Katerina we have, or that generation, that we speak about, okay, it is good that the thing works, but don't leave it there. Refactor the code so that little by little you improve it in terms of readability, for example. And unfortunately, I don't have any student from my Python education at the moment for that specific generation, but they said, we had a discussion in which they said, yeah, the purpose of refactoring is just to make the code smaller. Not really. It's not about making the code smaller. It's about making the code more readable, understandable, maintainable. And if I have two solutions in which one is a bit longer than the other, but it's easier to read, easier to maintain, I'm going to go for that one instead. So it's like, for example, when we had this discussion, all of you might remember, it was module 103, the task about the password validation that I said use regex. And I had one student that, of course, she had to find that out online. She found the regex. So her answer was basically one line. And I said, yeah, that works. And I said, okay, explain this solution to me. Can tell me what this is doing. And then she just reads the instructions. Yeah, it's validating a password. I'm like, no. Explain that regex to me. What does this regex says? Of course, I don't have to say that she was unable to tell me what the regex did. She just knew it worked. And I said, the problem with this is that, yeah, it's one line. That's beautiful. But if you have a bug in here, or if you have to refactor this thing, probably you're not in a position to refactor that. So no one understands what this thing does. It was a huge regex. And I said, I rather use my approach that, yeah, it's like 5 or 10 lines, but at the very least, I understand what's doing and I can maintain it. So keep that in mind. Always, always keep that in mind. It's not about making it work. It's about making it understandable as well, readable, maintainable. All right. And I really like the I'm gonna
The
steal
story.
that I'm gonna steal this thing from her. She in page 117 she said, okay, so she said, we know that Phil is really smart, right?
Mhm.
And then she said, Joe nodded. And then she said, and I hate to say it, but I'm pretty smart too. So if I cannot understand that, then blah blah blah. So I'm gonna steal that line. Anyways, but good. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Okay. Any thoughts on this? Any thoughts on that particular chapter? No.
It's
Okay.
self-explanatory. It's like, yeah, we need to think about it.
Yeah, but people
Actually,
don't do it.
complex solutions for a complex problem not always is the best. Yeah, if you can find a simple solution to any problem, the simplest solution will be the preferred one. By simple, I mean simple both in terms of execution and in terms of understanding of the problem.
Correct.
It's like, yeah.
Correct. So again, this happens also when we are like, for example, in Android specifically. I think all of you have started. Yeah, of course, all of you have started Android, but when it's the guide, okay, you don't have much. You just have to do what I'm doing. But when it's your own projects, the homework projects, in there you have the possibility to take different directions, and that is perfect. And in many cases you're going to have like two options. So in there it is important to not only explore, but if you realize that you took one direction and that particular direction is making your code significantly more complicated, either remember to refactor or explore the other approach as well. Probably it will make it easier. Some of you already know this term. I'm going to tell it to the other ones. There's a concept in programming that we call it doing a spike, which is basically you have a particular stuff that you need to do, okay? And you say, okay, I have no idea how to do this. I have no idea. I have not done it before, so I don't know how difficult it is. So what you do, you kind of time box, let's say 1 hour, 1 day, but it should be something small, in which you say, okay, I'm going to dedicate this period of time, a day, an hour, 2 hours, to try and just write as much code as possible to make it work, just so that I can become more familiar with how difficult this is going to be. Okay, and then that gives you more information to be able to make decisions, basically. So it's something that you need to keep in mind, and then you say, okay, this approach will not work. Let me then go to other approaches and so on. Because a lot of people, especially the students, I'm going to speak about the students, they have the check solution, the thing, everything is green, and they just leave it there. But no, your job is not done. That's the beginning of the job. You have it working, now refactor it to make it nicer. I think all of you do that, is that right? You guys have been putting multiple solutions in the homework. I have seen it. Okay, good. Nice. Let's do one more. Make the invisible more visible. What did you think about this one? Make the invisible more visible. Any thoughts on this?
I think about encapsulation when I read this. So yeah, but
okay.
Yes. So also, yeah, that's also for me. It's like the main. I don't remember it was he or she who wrote this, but yeah, it's like the main thing for me was about encapsulation. Also about the unit tests. So they're not pointless. They will provide benefits for us if we use them. They will provide the quality of our code if we use our unit. So I think it's the most two probably thing I take from this chapter. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that is correct. And one statement that he says here, which he says, invisibility can be dangerous. And there are, I highlight, he provides many examples. So unit testing is one of them. I like that last two that he gives about the progress of the project. If there are no, let's say, systems, or as an example, a board that is usually used in Kanban or Agile and all these things. If you don't have a board where you can visualize how your project is moving, what are the areas that, or what are the stories that are blocked, what are the stories that depend on what, information is being hidden, and as a result, you won't really be in a good position to understand how your project is progressing, and more importantly, what's the status of the project. The same in the last one when he says doing incremental development increases the visibility of the development process, because you can see in a, let's say, every week or every month or every sprint how the project is evolving over time. And that is why, going back to, this is not really what he meant, but it's a little bit related to this. You want to be in constant communication with the client so that the client can be able to see the progress, but more than that, so that you can receive feedback from that progress and you're able to adapt, adjust, and make any corrections that might be required. If the development process is invisible, as he said, that will mean that the client will not see the project until the very end. And that is very risky, because it is very likely that there's going to be changes required, misunderstandings, and things are just gonna not go well. So doing incremental development is one example of making the invisible visible, and that is the progress of the project. And yes, and the same for having, as an example, a board, or what he calls using bulletin boards and cards to make the progress visible as well, in which you have, okay, we have to develop 10 stories or 10 features. Let's put them on the board. Let's see how they progress over time, and so on. So that is important things to keep in mind, okay? To make your experience, your development experience more visible. Yeah, pretty much. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts?
Regarding the client, how much is too much? Like if you because if you present for example every week, and then the client will come with maybe changes every week, maybe changes that were discussed before. So how do we deal with that kind of
There,
scenarios?
those are two separate things. Those are two separate topics. So you mentioned how much is too much, and then so let me explain. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, that we have a sprint of 1 week. So every sprint is 1 week. I think it's a little bit too short, but 1 week, okay? And let's say that this week we did our progress, but we don't really have any feature to show to the client because there's in that particular week there was no feature, a new feature. We cannot show anything. Again, remember the client doesn't give an F about your code. They care about the behavior of the app. Okay, so if you implemented 100 lines of code but there's nothing to show about it, then what's the purpose? Don't meet the person. So how often is how often if too often? If you're meeting them every single week but you're showing them the same exact thing, then you're wasting your time. Unless it could be something about performance, like, hey, is this quick enough? Well, that's has changed the behavior of the app, so it is worth it meeting the person. But ideally, sprints will be, let's say, 2 weeks or to a month, and by the end of 2 weeks or 2 months, there has to be new features.
Yeah.
So you show that stuff. So that is part of your question. Your second question was, hey, Humberto, let's say that after X amount of meetings where I am showing new features, the client keeps changing stuff. That's a separate problem. That is, A, the client doesn't know what they want, and B, they are just making the whole process more difficult. So at that point, you need to speak to that. That is not a technical problem anymore. You have to tell the client, hey, look, we agreed on these terms. Now you're changing absolutely everything. If we keep on like this, we're not gonna make progress, because every time I show you something, you tell me you want to change, and it depends what the change is. If it's a color, if it's a font, if it's that's minor. But if they want a complete change of behavior, a complete change that it was supposed to do, I don't know, complete change of behavior, then you're wasting the time. You're wasting your time. So that is a separate problem. Technically, I mean, usually it happens more often in the beginning when they don't have they have an idea of what they want, but it's not until they touch it that they realize that things become concrete and they start saying. But as the project progresses, if it's a kind of quote unquote healthy, normal, by normal I mean like they're not just all over the place, then that request for changes will decrease. In terms of behavior, it might be just in terms of color changes, or if it's an animation, maybe adjust the animation time, things like that, very minor stuff. But
it's like a funnel, it goes.
Exactly. But in the beginning, and I know you experienced that in your internship, in the beginning, there was where we had the most changes and the more critical. But as we progressed, well, except for that minor stuff in the database, but that should have never happened. But other than that, the request went down, and it's
it was a funnel.
natural. And hopefully all of you are going to experience that when you start your internships in different scenarios, different contexts. But that is basically how it works. And to me, if you ask me, like, I love the development part, but I also enjoy a lot the part of dealing with the client. Not only because I like to deal with people, but also because at the end of the day, we need to remember, why do we write software? Because we want to solve a problem. And the better our software can solve that problem, the more satisfied the client is going to be. And how can we ensure that the client is satisfied? By having a close, constant communication with them. And that process of identifying, it's a little bit, especially in the beginning, this kind of detective work of trying to figure out what the real problem is and then devising or creating a solution. That is the best. And that is what happens in the internship with Enrique. Like the client, she has no technical background at all. And as I told Enrique, no, look, she was proposing some solutions. And I said, no. It's not about, we don't have to take, I mean, we can listen to the solutions, but we need to understand what's the problem. We come up with the solutions because we are the expert in the thing. What we need to do is not to hear her, what is it that her solution is. We need to know what her problem is. And once we understand her problem, we're going to be in a much better position to determine if the solution that she wants is the best solution. Sometimes it could be, sometimes it cannot be. Why? Because, well, she's not the expert on that. And that's how you should approach this type of things. The clients will be telling you solutions, but ask yourself, why do you want that? What's the problem that we're trying to solve? What problem does this solution solve? Maybe, yeah, okay, that we need to do that. But in other cases, it's, wait a minute, we can solve the same problem in a much easier way by doing this, or that. And also take that into account when you are the clients, because in many cases, you go to someone, and it doesn't have to be a developer. It could be you go to the bank, you go to a painter, you go wherever, and you start saying, I want this, and that. But what is the real problem? Tell people what is the problem, and they, which are supposed to be the experts, let them tell you what the solution is. Now, you can also do what I do, which is I already have in my head what I think are the best solutions. And when I speak to them, I tell them my problem, and I wait. I wait to see what solutions they offer, and I compare that to the ones that I have in my head. If they completely match, I say, okay, this is good. If they are completely different from what I expected, I'm going to be asking questions, yeah? But I do not influence their decision by me telling them what I want as a solution, unless I am 100% clear on specifically what I want. But other than that, begin by the problem. Do your research, of course, but wait for the solutions and then compare how those solutions match your expectations. And based on that, ask questions, investigate, and so on. So remember about that. It's about what is the problem, and then you find a solution. Because sometimes the problem might not even require an app. The problem might not even require an app, as an example. Yeah. So people will come, hey, I need an app for this, and that. And I said, you don't need an app. You need an Excel spreadsheet. That's the only thing you need. So you see, so keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. What is the problem and how can we solve it? Any thoughts on that? No? All right. And by the way, it's true what I said about the spreadsheet. I have had people that tell me, I need an app for all these things. I said, you can solve the whole thing with an Excel spreadsheet. Why do you want an app for this? But anyways, they want their app and you just tell them how to do it. But anyway, keep that in mind. Good. I have to leave a little bit early because I have a meeting, but thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone for joining. Happy to know that I was not going to be alone here, but enjoy your long weekend, and I will see you next week on your respective lectures or help sessions, okay?
No book next week,
Good.
right?
I don't recall.
Yeah, the next session says on the 14th of April.
Is next week a red day?
Not Thursday, I think. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, and that's why I'm wondering. Let me see my calendar.
The 4th.
Yeah, there should be. I have to update it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have to update it. Nice. Okay, in that case, thank you everyone for today, and I will see you next week. Enjoy your long weekend. Do not program too much. I know you're eager to program, okay? But take it easy, okay?
Yeah.
Take it easy. I'll see you then.
Bye. Black Polsk.